What's up, fellow gamers? Welcome to my class guide for the Gunslinger in Cyber Knight's Flashpoint. I have about 700 hours in the game, most of which on Chrome difficulty, so I'm pretty good at the game, and hopefully you find this advice useful, though I can't claim to be a master by any means. But take what you can, run with it, have a good time. The Gunslinger, actually, we'll unclick this just so you don't clutter the screen for a little bit. So Gunslinger is a class that is largely around using pistols or revolvers. I'm going to just shortcut that to handguns. For the most part, it's going to be use a pistol / revolver, which is going to be handgun. It does not include SMGs for most of these talents, and otherwise, though, will work for things like light weapons accuracy and whatnot. The nice thing is because they are light weapons, they're secondary weapons, you can wield two of them, so you can have double revolver, double pistol, one of each. That's all fine with no special cyberware required, other than the class itself requires the gun link. There's no special text in the gun link, it's just you have the class. Congrats. Kind of minor, but just wanted to bring up that, hey, that's kind of required. Otherwise, there are a decent number of talents that do not require using a handgun of some kind. I'll call them out when it comes for it. Basically, the way I think of this class is you're sort of choosing left side versus right side tree. If you're playing Gunslinger the way it feels like it was intended to be played, that said, there are ways to kind of break from that mold. We'll talk about that. This might have been useful, might have been not. Let's talk about the talents themselves. So first up is Link Watch, and Link Watch is basically really, really good Overwatch. It requires a handgun, but it comes with 2 shots innately. And because basic pistols can be shot with 1 AP remaining, if you're about to end your turn with 1 AP left, you can Link Watch, and that's 3 pistol shots, which is really good because pistols have very, very low recoil. You're very likely to land at least in one of those strikes. They have pretty good range. It's going to kind of work out pretty well. So that's pretty sweet. And if you're going to learn Link Watch, you probably want to take +1 charge. I would say that's probably pretty useful. As for increasing the Overwatch arc and increasing the damage, I think these are relatively low value. I wouldn't shell all the way out for the extra, like the 3rd charge here. Cooldown, probably not either. All this kind of stuff. I would probably skip a lot of these late game things, but I think the +1 charge here is really good. And then you maybe want to pick one of these. This one's just the superior version with a larger degree of increased arc. Realistically, Link Watch is very good. Again, the fact that it comes out with 2 shots is really, really, really nice. And I think +1 charge is very frequently going to be something you're going to grab because it's just very strong and very good, especially if you don't have a better weapon equipped that you would rather Overwatch with, like an assault rifle or a sniper rifle, something, which Link Watch, of course, can't trigger into. Next one is going to be Flush. Flush is a really nice generic combat talent. It works with any attack, so that's very helpful. And even if you miss the attack, you still get the debuff, which is good because a lot of what this thing does is soften the target up to make follow-up attacks better. So out of the box, 10% multiplicative less armor is a pretty big deal. This can help you take down hardened targets pretty nicely. The other exciting one is minus 25% cover bonus with which with upgrades you can bring all the way up to 50% minus cover bonus, which is really, really quite good because that's the max that cover bonus can be without some kind of other buff, which right now aren't on any enemies in the game. You can get up to 20% multiplicative armor reduction, which is really, really good. If you have some at all, you want kind of more. Remainder of the turn is a very, very short duration increase, so just by the fact that you're going for these upgrades, getting +1 turn here is fine. If you're against really, really heavy enemies, drones and whatnot, where it actually will take you more than a turn or might take you more than a turn, this duration actually matters. But otherwise, you should try to focus fire somebody the same turn you're debuffing them, the same turn you're aggroing them. So like this isn't very useful, and then because of that, like because this is kind of dead, because you're probably going to go here, you don't really love having a dead node here for getting +1 charge and cooldown. But look, 3 turn cooldown, 2 charges, get rid of all the cover bonus, minus 20 armor is pretty decent. For something that functionally costs 0 AP, it just comes with the attack. It does mean that your like inciting attack doesn't have this buff in the first place, but again, it can't miss. So it's overall pretty reasonable. I think Flush is just generically a very, very good 1-point wonder. You're getting a lot of the power kind of immediately after the first point here, and then because there are other very good Gunslinger talents, I often wait until usually after around level 15 before I reinvest in a Flush. That's if I'm not multi-classing, but it's totally reasonable. Next is Snapshot, which is pretty interesting overall. So if you are caught in an Overwatch cone and you go for an attack while stuck in Overwatch, your attack will come out first. Now, your attack is not guaranteed to actually land, is the thing. You still have to land the accuracy, and unless you have some kind of buffs on or you've got a lot of mods on your pistol or revolver of choice, you are not guaranteed to land the attack. Now, over here is Called Shot, which can say guaranteeing a glancing hit, and this combo can be nice. The pathing's kind of awkward, but hey, at least it's there. Realistically, though, for me, my experience, and yours may be different, is that I often forget Snapshot exists because it's not on your like skill bar, it's a passive. And so you have to remember, oh right, my Gunslinger has learned Snapshot. I can actually attack instead of trying to do something else to get out of this one. Let me go for it. And you've also got to hope that your accuracy is high enough that you actually land the shot, because if you miss, you just kind of get in a bad state. You can go for this. I personally tend to try to path around it because the pathing out of this kind of sucks. I mean, Twin Iron is totally fine, but going all the way around here is a lot of points you have to spend when you can path in a different way and do something else. So personally, I don't have a big amount of love for Snapshot. You can get some bonus evasion with it, which is fun. You can get a move point afterwards, but again, all this requires you to have already been caught in an Overwatch cone. And yeah, like all this feels very, very awkward and kind of weird. It's thematically really, really cool, right? The whole high noon fast like duel stuff is really awesome and thematic, but power level wise, I very often skip over this. Let's keep talking about the 6 shooter tree. As I mentioned, this is kind of a left side versus right side situation. The left side tree is very, very revolver heavy, which I think is pretty neat. So Twin Iron, technically not revolver heavy, but you'll kind of think about it a little bit here. So it's fire both guns. And by the way, right, you're going to make noise with the loudest of the two, of course, right? Silenced pistol plus revolver. They're going to hear the revolver shot. And so one thing to be careful about is if you are trying to play a silenced play style, any of these dual weapon talents, there's basically 2 of them. There's Twin Iron and there's Gun Kata in the top right. Think long and hard about which 2 weapons you're running. Because if you need this to deal more damage, and it is pretty good for dealing more damage, kind of think about it. Now, one thing I want to bring up here, actually, is that Twin Iron isn't actually very good with dual pistol. So the way this works is Twin Iron as well as Gun Kata. It functionally combines both guns into one shot. So unlike a full auto assault rifle or urban assault or e-rifle or SMG or anything like that, where each bullet is rolled individually, this pretends you have one gun, where you average the accuracy, you average the armor shred, you average the crit damage mods, and then you just add the damage together and add some stuff on top for some armor shred because, you know, you might bring your numbers down because you aren't in fact hitting twice, and so here you go. Now, plus 15% armor shred is going to generally be a positive for you in a lot of cases using revolver. It's strictly positive using pistols, don't get me wrong. If you want to upgrade it, you can get more shred, and you can make the AP cost down to 2. If you are on double pistol, it's really one of the only ways to make pistols shred. So going to 35% armor shred on, again, it counts as a single attack. It's not 2 rolls of 35, it is 1 roll of 35. So be careful of that one. But yeah, you can come in and be like, hey, I'm going to shoot pistols twice. I'm going to combine their damage together, and I'm going to shred at 35%. But for 3 AP, you can just shoot pistols twice. Now, if you're like exactly 4 or 6 action points, you can then Twin Iron and then single shot, and get 1 more out of that one. But if you have 3 AP left, Twin Iron is no different than just pistol shot, because you can shoot pistols with 1 AP remaining. So you can do some finagling here. You can still go positive, but hey, keep in mind, you're now trying to fight on evens. Then use Twin Iron to go down to 1 or down to 3, and then go from there. Or I guess you can just, you know, make it cost 2 action points, you know, full stop, and it's pretty good there. But really, in terms of like actually saving you some benefits, to me, like double revolver means, oh, I'm actually saving 1 action point. And this says, okay, every 5 turns, save 1 action point. That's okay. It's fine. It's not lovely, really, right? Like, the fact that it saves an action point and says, look, I need the damage now, I need both my revolver shots, like, let's go. I think that is very reasonable and is an argument you can make. And also, it's like kind of on the way. It's pathing toward a lot of other things that are valuable. So I'm not going to say don't take Twin Iron, but it is not incredibly exciting as a talent. The thing to bring up, especially, is you can't guarantee that your second gun is as good as your first. Like, let's say, for example, right, you are saying, yeah, I'm going to use Twin Iron here. And it's like, well, I can revolver once and then just pistol once. And that's really no different from using Twin Iron by using my revolver or my pistol once. If I have 2 revolvers, is my second revolver as good as my first revolver, right? Now, maybe I have 3 AP left. I can shoot my big revolver once and then do nothing, or shoot my big revolver and my secondary combined for 3. Cool, it's pretty understandable. Or if I get it down to 2 action point costs, it's like, well, I'm getting a free offhand attack. But the question is, right, how strong is your weaker weapon? Because this is basically saying either attack with your weaker weapon or attack with your weaker weapon at an action point cost of 1. Now, in most cases, that's usually worth it. It's, you know, better than half value in most cases. But again, this is what the talent is doing, is saying, well, you get a discount on your weaker weapon attacking, which I want to kind of just say is sort of only okay. Next one up here is Finger Trick. I think this one is actually really, really nice. So you get a nice 10% ballistic damage, which is fine. The problem is, so here's kind of funny stuff, right? So you get 10% ballistic damage for the duration, which, you know, right, buff and reload lasts until the end of next turn. So I have this and next turn for this 10% ballistic damage. I don't technically have to use revolvers here. I can just use it for ballistic damage. Now, is that a really great buff? No, but that's fine. Probably I'm using it for the reload mechanic, which is every time I shoot a revolver in single shot mode, aka I'm not using fanning, I'm not using gun kata, I'm not using twin iron. It says does not work with these right here. But when you fire them, put one bullet back in. Okay, cool. So how many shots am I getting? Well, I'm spending 1 AP on Finger Trick, so I'm only getting at most 2 shots this turn. But I can get up to 3 shots the next turn. In fact, I can increase the duration and get another 3 shots the turn afterwards. It's like, oh, okay, I have a 3-turn duration, 3-turn cooldown, never have to reload my revolver. That's actually, and then it comes with like a small damage increase. This is functionally more equivalent to like 3% more damage against the average like mid-game target here. So, you know, the damage buff here is mostly cosmetic, is the way I would feel about it. It's pretty small and often doesn't make a difference. Occasionally it will, and you'd be happy about that one, but what it's really doing is saying, well, grab Finger Trick, and even with like, you know, almost no investment, it's going to save me like 4 bullets, going to save me like most of a reload. You know, at a 1 AP cost, I have to kind of, you know, send at the beginning. It's fine. You spend the other 4 points here. I was like, okay, it's almost permanent uptime. Spend 1 action point every 3 turns, never reload again. Yeah, that can easily make up for it, as long as I am steadily attacking. Revolver's my primary gun of use, and okay, cool, it makes up, you know, for all of it here. It's fine. Again, we're kind of starting with the like super not awe-inspiring stuff and going towards the better stuff, which is now with fanning. So fanning is really where you're excited. And I mentioned this before, right? Where it's like, hey, you know, one downside of twin iron is that you have to use your secondary gun, and it might not be as good. You might have only bought one good one, or only dropped one good one, or only crafted one good one, or, you know, the same thing for the weapon mods here, right? Finger Trick at least allows you to say, well, no, my best revolver is my best revolver. I can just keep using it. That's useful. Fanning says use your best revolver. And it comes out of the bat saying, hey, by the way, for 3 action points, shoot up to 6 revolver shots. That's really, really good. You even get a slightly increased degree of arc here, because the revolver arc might not be quite good enough, so get in here. I have played an entire playthrough on Chrome of just saying, like, my primary damage character is a Gunslinger with a revolver, and fanning slaps. It slaps. It feels really good. Now, you're spending a lot of points here, right? Dropping the cooldown to 3, getting the second charge. This means anytime you really care, fanning is definitely up. And if it's not a time for fanning, you've got Finger Trick to make sure you're not running out of ammo. This, by the way, means that, like, I'm running around using Finger Trick, and then I'm like, oh, there's a group here. Great. I spend 1 AP walking forward, fanning. Right, because the gun is basically always full ammo, and then, okay, you have to do a hard reload after fanning, but they're all dead. The nice thing is, right, the big revolver has enough damage where 2 bullets will often kill most guards, so if 3 guards are in range, they're probably all dead. If their captains need more shots, okay, you can lower the full auto cone to only show 2. It's 3 bullets each one. That will almost always kill captains and other hardened targets, so this is a really good way to be like, well, I'm going to use my best gun, and I'm going to get 12 action points worth of shots in 3 action points. That's extremely powerful. Now, keep in mind, it does 30% less damage without investment. So you can cut that down to 25% less, to 20% less, and then finally full damage here. So yes, the investment is pretty expensive. It's fanning plus 8 to get all the points here. But at fanning plus 8, which isn't that extremely hard to get to, again, 3-turn cooldown, 2 charges, full damage with plus 30 to the arc, so it's plus 40 overall. That is a lot of damage output. You will basically clear the room. You can figure out if you want to hit 2 people, 3 people, or more. And the fact that it uses your best revolver, because you pick which gun you're shooting with, is really helpful. Fanning especially is really nice, because what you can do for a setup is actually skip things like Twin Iron and maybe even Finger Trick and be like, hey, what I primarily want to do is be a stealth-focused pistol gunslinger, but my offhand is a revolver, and I've got moderate in, like, and you can even just do fanning with no extra points here. Because, like, minus 30% damage is kind of hurtful, sure, but you're like, hey, look, there's a grunt captain here and like a shotgunner right next to him. 30% less damage fanning is still, right? Okay, 6 shots minus a third is 4 revolver shots. That's like roughly the math. That's close enough anyway. It's 4 revolver shots for 3 action points. It's 8 AP for 3 AP. That's really good. And if all you want to do is hit 2 people with a revolver, guess what? You just printed 5 action points. You printed 5 action points once every 5 turns. That is an absurdly, stupidly good talent. As a low investment thing, just being like, look, I'm a stealth pistol guy. I'm going the stealth playthrough, but I need to get rid of some guy who's scary. Bam, Fanning's just there. My offhand's ready to go, and it's really good. Now, again, this is revolver only, but it just works in a lot of cases. It's just there, and you can kind of plan around it because it uses your best revolver, and you can just kind of be in the situation. I do have a soft spot for Fanning. I think it's quite good. It's interesting because if you do like the numbers comparison, it'll often look worse than gun kata, but to me, the usability is just very high, and it works for me a lot. I think other people might have lower opinions of Fanning than I do, but I have found really good success with this thing just working when it's supposed to work, when it needs to work. We can go up the tree and move towards Ricochet. So Ricochet is an ability that does require specific weaponry. As we are already in the revolver side of the tree, with specifically Fanning and Finger Trick literally requiring revolvers, Ricochet requires a single shot weapon. So revolver, railgun, and sniper rifle. Ricochet is pretty awesome in that it does not care about optimal range. It does not care about cover, at least as far as I can tell. And so, look, if you're playing a primary gunslinger and you're like, look, I'm using my revolver, I'm trying to do what I can, I'm trying to be useful, you don't necessarily need bonus crit damage. Revolvers already crit really, really well, but you can make the bounce range go up to 10, then 15, and this lets you find a lot of random kill angles. It feels really good. Plus 1 charge minus cooldown, all overall pretty reasonable. You can add more crit damage on the top as well if you really have stacked a lot of crit chance. You can, add another 1.5x damage with this, which, again, if you can find the crit chance, go for it. It's gonna work pretty reasonably. Again, if you can find the way to get that, which there are ways to do it in this class, so I'm not going to say it's terrible. But one thing is, like, this does work alongside Finger Trick, right? It's going to be a standard single shot revolver that works with Ricochet here. It's totally fine. Again, if you can stack the crit chance, you're pretty happy. This just gives you some extra target access where it's like once in a while I'm in a weird spot, the guard's in a weird spot, I'd have to move to break cover or whatever, or they're just behind a hard cover, but I can find an angle. It's like, well, here you go. This shot's just pretty good. My experience has been playing a pistol heavy gunslinger that I have not had a lot of time. Like, I've not found myself liking Ricochet. Last time I was running it on a pistol focused gunslinger, I'm like, oh, I'm just happy with gun kata or Fanning or whatever else, and I just don't need the Ricochet stuff. Like, I just don't get any situations where I'm usually going full auto and then finishing somebody off already. What Ricochet's really good for is playing for a more sniper focused build, which means a lot of these talents are getting skipped because they're pistol heavy and whatnot. And in fact, Ricochet, again, because it skips cover, you don't need flush to make it better. But this works really, really well on sniper rifles, which makes it more of a secondary class gunslinger sort of talent, but that's been my experience with the talent so far. Thematically, it's amazing. It's really, really fun to use, but it's often not all that powerful. Trigger Vector is next up, and I think is one of the more powerful talents in the class. I really like using it. So the fun thing here is, all right, I press this button, I basically get the action point back by getting +1 move point. Okay, fine. I have evasion from any return, which only matters if I end my turn somewhere dangerous or have to run through Overwatch or stuff, which is pretty questionable. But I ignore all recoil. And so, all right, it's kind of like Iron Grip in that it's a recoil refresher or whatever. Again, it pays for the action point back as long as I was going to move anyway. If I wasn't going to move, then okay, I'm sad. By the way, canceled if you miss or a hit, so hey, be careful. Make sure you're not doing this with poor accuracy. Make sure you've got some kind of accuracy buffs. And by the way, Gunslinger has very, very few accuracy buffs, and most pistols don't have enough, or most handguns don't have enough innate accuracy to guarantee glancing hits. And so you actually got to find some way of buffing your accuracy to make sure this goes well, because if you miss, you lose the buff, and that can be pretty painful. Now, the nice thing is you spend 1 more point, and it's like, well, cool. I turned it into an action point printer, and I now get to ignore recoil for twice as long. If you take Trigger Vector, take +1 turn. It's a no-brainer. Just do it. It's pretty obviously correct. Down here, you could say, well, now that I've got a 2-turn Trigger Vector, and in fact, probably drop the cooldown if you're already taking a 2-turn Trigger Vector. Drop the cooldown. There you go. You can use it, 30% more often, which is pretty useful to print movement points and also print accuracy. Because revolvers can often have quite a lot of recoil, and that can be punishing, right? But you come down here and you're like, look, I've got pretty good uptime here. How about I get 25% ballistic as extra pure? And that's pretty sweet. Now, again, in the revolver case, I've got a lot of pure damage already. The need for this buff is relatively smaller. But if I'm going for a pistol-focused build, right, and I'm using basic pistols, and I've come through here with like flush or whatever, and I take fanning as my secondary benefit, and I come up here and take trigger vector, oh, now my pistols have 25% ballistic as pure. To be fair, recoil doesn't matter for those anyway, because they have basically no recoil no matter what happens. But you can be this kind of good spot where you've really pushed your pistol to a lot more damage, even against hardened targets, in case you don't want to make a bunch of noise, and it's kind of scary overall. Or even if you aren't a primary gunslinger, you're like a tourist, and you're like, well, I'm actually primarily a soldier or primarily a sniper or whatever. Well, trigger vector for a basic sniper rifle, 25% ballistic is pure, is a lot of bonus damage. For a sniper rifle, ricochet is a lot of bonus damage. There's just a lot to like here. It's pretty far into the class. You got to go up quite a bit to get there, but it's right there and feels pretty good. The final points here, by the way, are get a second move point and don't cost an action point to use. And so if you spend trigger vector and you go into the +8, you've got almost permanent uptime because 3-turn cooldown, 2-turn duration. So it's 2 turns on, 1 turn off, 0 AP, 2 move points. And so every 3 turns, you print 4 move points. You do something like 50% to 80% bonus damage, even more against really hard targets. And never have recoil. Mess with your accuracy. That's incredible. That is a very, very, very good buff for a 2/3 uptime. You're really gonna like that. You're gonna really enjoy that. It's very, very powerful. Again, it's pretty deep into the tree, but this is like a reason to go left side. Is you can be a stealth focused gunslinger with a pistol. Fanning is awesome. You can go onto trigger vector and your pistol's still awesome. It just works. You have a lot of consistent throughput. It's very powerful. Cool stuff there. Let's go into the middle tree. So up to the left is Cover Me, which is a active anti-Overwatch talent. The fact that it's active, for me, helps me realize, oh, right, I've got this talent, I can use it. This lets you leave Overwatch cones. Now, you won't always get away with 2 AP. That's, I guess, not always going to be true. You can get a 3rd action point of movement as well. But in a lot of cases, you can get to, like, hard cover, and then at which point you're, like, 20% to get hit. You're probably going to be fine. I do not find myself needing the 3rd, like the cooldown decrease. I do not find myself needing the 2nd charge. But in terms of pathing out and being like, hey, it's here as a reactive anti-Overwatch talent, overall pretty reasonable. As you get really adept at the game, you tend to not get caught in Overwatch very much, but like it's still useful in terms of being like, hey, it's here, let's be careful. You know, don't hit me. It's fine. It's not the reason you're excited about Gunslinger, but it's a totally serviceable tool. Move on to the right towards Pin Down. Here, finally, we have ways of generating some accuracy. So, again, much like Flush, it's okay if you miss, you get the debuff. You slow them down and lower evasion by 10%. This is an additive hit chance increase. 10% will be enough for a revolver with a scope and a grip mod to get to 80% accuracy and thus get a guaranteed glancing hit, which can, like, leave trigger vector on or make sure, like, snapshot will work, right? It will easily be enough to make sure a pistol, even without mods, is going to be enough to accurately hit 80%. It's going to be kind of nice here. You can further lower initiative and move speed. You can further lower initiative and go -1 move point. I personally find that slowing down guards is not all that important. That said, the typical guard, like, action point loadout is 2 move points, 4 action points, and so they usually do have 1 move point to delete. You can give them minus move speed. You can give them -4 initiative. Personally, I like, this is solid for the 10% evasion here, and to be like, hey, look, I shot somebody, I made them easier to hit. Increase the duration to a 3rd turn, I find not that useful. Getting extra charge, I mean, I guess you can lower the cooldown, I mean, I guess, but realistically, it's like, I just don't find a lot of reason to slow them down. If they're melee and charging at you, okay, cool, this helps you keep them at arm's length and you get more time. I mean, at this point, like -50% move speed, they're just not going to reach you, right? In fact, if you're playing some kind of combat sniper and you want to slow down with like an urban assault or like revolver or whatever, again, more sniper multiclass shilling, guess what? You can slow them down. And I mean, even just this is enough, right? Even this is enough to be like, this guy's not going to reach us. They're not going to get in range. Don't worry about it. We've kept them away. That can all totally work, but you also have just Blink Watch. You can be like, well, you're at an Overwatch cone. You're also not reaching us. You know, total possibilities here. This is fine. I would definitely not recommend you heavily invest here. The benefits here are just really, really small. The other guard has to start acting and doing things that you care about on their turn, but also, like, the movement has to matter. And all that's kind of niche enough that I'm going to say, nah, it's not a very big deal. Next is Gunsmoke Drift, which is, again, thematically very cool. For me, my tastes, my playstyle, I try to never get attacked. I would say I get attacked once every, like, 5 missions, so anything that triggers once per 5 missions is not something I'm actually going to want to use. But if you want to try to play some kind of evasion tank playstyle, keep in mind Trigger Vector has plus evasion on it. You can... Right, with Snapshot, you can have this one happen as well, where you can get 10 evasion when this thing pops, and you trigger your attack, and now, congratulations, maybe you don't get hit. Right, you can run into the Overwatch cone, and let them draw on you, and then, a combination of Trigger Vector and Snapshot and Gunsmoke Drift, you're like, hey, if you miss me, I'm cool. There are ways of stacking this, right? You can get cover, you can use the Cyber Knight's, it's not called Downer, no, it's, Cyber Knight has a plus evasion plus cover bonus, talent. The Soldier has a minus accuracy to enemies talent. I think the Vanguard has one as well. So, like, there are ways of lowering hit chance, giving you evasion, and you can try to use this as, like, a way to print action points. You can get even more evasion here to, like, become a real evasion tank. And if you go all the way in, look, you can use it as, 3 charges, 4-turn cooldown, action point printer. Like, it's all kind of interesting and cool, but, like, wow, that is really unreliable, and that just by itself scares me. Because you can freely multiclass into something like Soldier and print action points through critting and whatnot, I would not use Gunsmoke Drift as my action point printer if I wanted one. In fact, you can just use Trigger Vector, and you can print 2 move points for 2 out of 3 turns. You're probably going to be moving in most cases. Here's your 25% bonus damage. Like, all those things considered, I mean, I think it's kind of awkward to use. You can take it as a 1-point wonder as you're, like, pathing through the middle of the tree, but this thing is, like, pretty awkward. Feel free to leave comments below if you've actually gotten value out of this and you're like, no, actually, I use Gunsmoke Drift and I, like, bait a bunch of attacks onto me and it totally works. I could buy that being true, but my playstyle does not align with this quite really at all. Next is Quick Draw, which I think is, again, I think thematically this whole class does really, really well. This one I think actually is mechanically quite solid. So it ends your turn right away, and you've got to have 1 AP remaining when doing so. So hey, be careful if you're using basic pistols, you've got to choose what that last AP is doing. Is it a pistol shot? Is it a Quick Draw? The Quick Draw is pretty sweet because, again, there's ways of, flooding evasion in. You can get a little bit more, 25% here. So again, you can be like, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to hit Quick Draw, I'm going to hit Trigger Vector, well, Trigger Vector first, hit Quick Draw, and then I'm sitting here with 35 total evasion, and I'm standing behind cover. If I'm at hard cover, that's 85 hit chance reduced. Guess what? You're gonna miss me. Like, yes, there's totally a world where you run in, Trigger Vector, Quick Draw, and then say, go Gunsmoke Drift me, but that makes me uneasy. But hey, you do you. If it works for you, great, I'm happy for you. I could totally buy that being a real thing where you're like, nope, I aggro, I go in hard cover, I hit Quick Draw, and I laugh because next turn I get a bunch of action points. If that's your playstyle, I think it can work. It just makes me nervous, but sure. Quick Draw would be the other piece of that puzzle, though, to make that actually good. Cool. So spend 1 AP, and then for your entire next turn, 10 crit chance, 10 evasion, and enough initiative that you are almost certainly going first next turn. That's not bad, right? Spend 1 AP, get 10 crit chance for the entire next turn. I'm cool with that. Pistols and revolvers both, which are, again, the primary guns of the Gunslinger, have a bunch of bonus crit damage. Yep, cool. Seems totally reasonable. You can cut the cooldown to 4. You can bump the crit chance all the way to 25%. Wow, that's really good. It's probably more than twice as good as what we got initially. You can bump the initiative up to 12. Drop the cooldown to 3. Cool, keep going. Another 15 evasion, I'm more skeptical on. Like, yeah, I don't really care. Again, if you're trying to play evasion tank, it's there for you. But in terms of, like, yeah, I just grabbed this to get 25 crit chance for a turn. Cool. And if you really do fully invest, you can make the action point cost 0. Consider you're pressing this once every 3 turns, spending these last functionally 3 to say, hey, I would like to save 1 AP every 3 turns. Well, that means you are, per point, getting 0.1 AP per turn. That's usually not a good return on investment. So if you're already here, and you're like, yeah, I could do this and spend these. If you don't need the evasion, you don't need the initiative, which, to be fair, you don't. You're at 12 already. You don't need 16. Using this to save you that last level of AP, unless you're doing a lot of, like, I shoot with my last 1 action point with a pistol, and then I quick draw. If that's a very common playstyle for you, okay, I get it. But in terms of pure ROI, these 3 points are often not going to be worth it for you. But otherwise, again, what it does is say, hey, for pretty low investment, at a pretty solid uptime of 4 or 3 turns, 25 crit chance for your entire next turn, and guarantee you go first. Guarantee you go first is really helpful. It removes a lot of what could be bad luck for you. Pretty powerful stuff there. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty solid. I would not be rushing for it, but if I'm staying in Gunslinger, I'd be very happy to grab Quick Draw around level 12, like further grab Quick Draw around like level 12 or so when my big investments are done. The other big one is, again, if you can do the floor planning, 25 crit chance for an entire turn lets you set up a really, really big kill turn, and we're going to be talking about that at the very end of the Desperado tree. We talked about Link Watch already. We go here, we get some light weapons accuracy, and we grab Thrown Bullet. So Thrown Bullet is a little bit like Lure or Shadow, the other two Lure talents. Unfortunately, the usability here is really, really poor, but the upside's actually even better than the other two talents. So the range is 12 meters, and the radius is 4, which means the max hit somebody distance is 16. Basic guard vision range is 18 to 22 for snipers. Basic guards are 18, snipers at 22. And even if you take the range increases, right, you go from 12 to 15 to 18, you cannot Thrown Bullet if they're facing at you. Because of course you walk at them, they see you, and then they're going to be angsty. Now, if there's cover in the way, you can crouch walk up to a sandbag or barricade or something, and then throw this over that, in which case you can get a guard to turn around. But this functionally cannot actually stop a guard from seeing you on the approach if they're already looking at you. That, compared to Shadow or Lure, is a pretty big deal. Even with investment, again, you can't have this thrown over them without using cover to close the gap yourself. That's a pretty big downside. That said, it also deafens them so they can't hear footsteps. That's actually a pretty big deal. Not that I'd recommend you play a Gunslinger like Cyrus Sword or something, or anything else where you're going to be melee focused, but the team utility of deafening somebody is actually relatively high. And in cases where the guard already has their back turned, aka all you want to do is sneak past them in a run, obviously then by definition they would have their back turned. Or if you are able to sneak by, great, you can turn the guard away, make sure they're facing the wrong direction, you can deafen them, and then your team can run past them. So if you can get around the usability, this actually does some really cool things for you, where it says, okay, this guard is looking the wrong way, they won't hear us, we can all leave. You can get there. Having used Thrown Bullets in a lot of my Gunslinger builds, because I like doing right side tree builds, I would say you get use out of this about once per mission. That's roughly my usability. And that's at Thrown Bullet plus 0 and using it as basically a pathing node. It's it meets the bar for me. And because I don't think there's a ton of 1-point wonders on Gunslinger overall, you don't really lose much by pathing through this. I guess you lose the opportunity cost of an attribute node, which to be fair, these nodes are pretty good, but it is just barely usable. Again, if you cap it out here, you get a radius of 6, you get a range of 18, you get a second charge, you get a 3-turn cooldown. It's okay. I would really not recommend investing here, because I think if you're in Gunslinger, first of all, if you really want this kind of stuff, just multi-class Vanguard or Agent EX and go learn Lure or Shadow or something. That's just going to be better in general. But even beyond that, I would say, look, it's a good 1-point wonder. I would really not recommend investing further, but it's actually a pretty solid 1-point wonder. Just again, keep in mind that there's usability around the range being quite short. Next one here is Hold Up. Hold Up is also a little bit awkward. Your target has to be unaware or suspicious. It is not a reactive stun to combat. It is a proactive stun that, to be fair, only costs 1 action point, which is very helpful. But it basically says, hey, look, we're trying to sneak around. I need this guard here to not be angsty. I need this guard to just be stunned. It stuns until the end of next turn. Now, it's worth noting that the stun breaks if the target is attacked. So, hey, be careful, right? The reason to use Hold Up is either oh crap, this guard's gonna patrol into us, we figured out with a look ahead or something, and it's don't worry, as long as I don't walk into the vision range, because again, the base range here is 15, so they can't be looking at me, or I've got to have cover in the way. But if I have line of sight, and again, you do need line of sight, so you need cover, or they have to not be facing you. You can do this and be okay, just kidding, you're not gonna reach us. And our next turn says, this turn is safe. We can all walk past. They're not going to report. It's going to be fine. Stunning a guard blocks QSEC or security events entirely from that guard. And it says, okay, on the next turn, we can wait until this guard's initiative is over, because they're stunned. They're stunned for the next turn as well. Let it go. Okay, cool. Let's all dogpile. And the first attack coming in will have the 10% evasion buff, then the debuff goes away, but the rest of your turn had all of turn A and all of turn B to get into position, to react, to get ready, and then clean the guard up. And look, a 1 AP save me, even if the save me is kind of situational, because sometimes the range doesn't line up or the line of sight doesn't line up, that can all be a little bit funky. It's still a 1 AP save me. It's non-random, and honestly, that's pretty good overall. It's pretty good overall. Now you can jump the range to 20, which will now beat basic guard vision range. You jump to 25, which completely crushes every guard's vision range. Now I don't think you really need to heavily invest in Hold Up. Drop it to a 4-turn cooldown, get a second charge. You can make the inciting attack have 25 crit chance as well on top of that one. Realistically, is going to save you sometimes a couple action points, because like, hey, if you get it lucky and you get your triple damage crit because of hold up, all right, cool, that saved you 2 attacks, right? That saved you 4 action points or whatever. But only if that was going to happen in that situation, right? 1/4 of the time you're saving 4 AP. Cool, this is kind of a 1 AP reduction in this ability, sort of, kind of. Only if the inciting attack has a bunch of crit damage on it. Yeah, I probably wouldn't bother, to be honest. But again, I think this is like, though it is situational, it is traveling up towards gun kata, which is, I think, fine. It's a fine place for it to be. And it just has some usability here. I think it's decent enough. It's totally fine. This is not what I'm like signing up for Gunslinger to get, but if I'm going up towards gun kata, I'm pretty happy to grab this. It's usable enough. Penultimate ability is going to be Called Shot. This one is kind of interesting because it has really separate purposes. So the first line of text I'm going to read is guaranteed a glancing hit, which means Called Shot / Snapshot will combo together and it will guarantee you what you wanted. Hey, you get your 1 move point, you get your whatever, you can go run and get into Overwatch cones and do all this stuff, and then, hey, by the way, Called Shot, I get to guarantee that I break you out of Overwatch. Okay, that's kind of cute. And then if you're not in the situation and you actually rolled well on the attack, well, guess what? It comes with some flat crit damage. And by the way, it works for any ranged attack. So guess what? If you want to go into Gunslinger, and by the way, hold up requires a pistol or revolver. Thrown bullet does not. Just wanted to kind of call out that you need a handgun for hold up, much like you need it for Link Watch and Twin Iron and things like that. Okay, anyway, back to Called Shot. Called Shot is any attack here, and it comes with 25 crit damage. So you can say, hey, you know what? It's an extra cooldown. It's no bonus AP at all. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shoot an assault rifle full auto, and because I have a bunch of crit chance stacked up from other sources, I came out of Soldier and have Savagery. I'm over here with Quick Draw and have 25%. 25% from this. I have snipers on my team that gave me 35 crit chance or whatever. It's like, all those things are very, very possible. And it's like, well, cool. I was able to print crit damage onto my character with Called Shot. Now, 6-turn cooldown means I'm getting it once or twice per mission. I can drop it to 4 and get a second charge. Okay, I'm probably getting 4 per mission. Okay, fine. I can give myself some innate crit chance here, jump to 25 to make sure this crit damage works. In fact, I can do the entire thing and say, oh, this attack actually has 50 crit chance and 25 crit damage on it. Okay, I'm actually going to guarantee we're going to start the crit streak or whatever. I want to really guarantee that whoever I'm killing is definitely dying. If I'm a Cyber Knight and I need to trigger Downer on the enemies to give them all a bunch of crit vuln, bam, Called Shot can guarantee it. If I need to trigger Recoup and start my Savagery streak on this turn as a Soldier, bam, Called Shot can do it. It's totally there, and again, because it's going to work, it's, you know, cost 0 AP, it's going to work on a full auto. You can do quite a lot of damage printing here. Now, again, you're still doing damage printing with 2 attacks on a 4-turn cooldown, which isn't all that often. I think this is a like totally reasonable talent. It is not among the best talents. I'm not going to rush for Called Shot because it's not as good as the best stuff in the game. But on a like high level build, probably level 20, 25, I'm gonna start giving Called Shot a real look and be like, you know what? If you're not in the spot where your guns are so strong, where you kill everyone in 1 full auto anyway, Called Shot is a really good way to be like, you know what? I'm going to get a lot of bonus damage. It's going to go really well. Keep in mind, it's very likely you install a display link for 25 crit damage here. So this is now giving you 50 crit damage. Now you're critting for 2x. 50% chance to do 2x damage. Pretty good damage printer. Again, only for 1 attack, but it can start, you know, a snowball of good things. And the final talent here is Gun Kata. So right side versus left side, we had fanning all the way over here saying use your best revolver, shoot basically always 6 bullets. If you're shooting 2 people, it's 3 each. You're shooting 3 people, it's 2 each. Shooting 4 people, it's 2, 2, 1, 1. But it's 6 bullets no matter what. Gun Kata says use both guns. So if you have a revolver in one hand and a pistol in the other, you're still only shooting a revolver once per enemy. If you have a pistol in both hands, you're shooting your pistols twice per enemy. And you get a pretty wide arc. Comes with baseline 45-degree increased fire angle. Unlike fanning, does not come with reduced damage, right? So the arc is better, the damage is better, except that this requires that both your guns are being used. It, again, averages the accuracy, averages the shred, averages the crit damage, and then actually combines the flight damage per hit. So if you're 1 revolver, 1 pistol, well, you're basically, you know, like, there's 2 considerations here. And I don't want to undersell Gun Kata. It is very good. Don't get me wrong. Gun Kata is very good, but I'm going to, like, devil's advocate for fanning, but try to be fair to Gun Kata here as well. Okay, if you have 2 revolvers and your revolvers are identical, and you have 3 enemies in front of you, I know it's like a lot of situations. Gun Kata and fanning are identical from an AP and action point perspective, except that Gun Kata doesn't have minus 30% damage and has an extra 35-degree arc. So with 3 enemies with equal revolvers, they are the same skill, except gun kata is strictly superior. All right, that's a good foot to start on. You can grab cooldown, and +1 charge. You can grab cooldown, and the +1 charge here actually costs 2. So hey, Fanning's more expensive than gun kata in that boat as well. All right, well, what else can gun kata do? Well, gun kata can get a 105-degree arc firing angle and 10% crit damage. Right, for the point that Fanning had to spend here, gun kata gets this. So if you want to get a bunch of usability, gun kata is actually 105-degree firing angle, 10 crit chance. Fanning is minus 30 damage. Wow, okay, the comparison is still really good. However, again, the requirement here is that if your guns are the same power level. I personally like playing stealthily a lot, and so I actually like having a silenced pistol in one hand and a revolver in the other. Well, gun kata is going to be like, hey, guess how much damage a pistol does compared to Fanning's revolver? It's less than 30% less. It's much worse than that. A revolver is going to do like triple the damage of a pistol. And so suddenly, the fact that this is actually using your revolver for all the damage is better than gun kata being like, well, I'm going to hit a bunch of people, but also I'm only getting 3 revolver shots. That other one gave me 6 revolver shots. Seems kind of nice. The other upside gun kata has, though, as we kind of dance back and forth on pros and cons, because really, this is a direct comparison. Like, these are the 2 best talents in Gunslinger. You're probably going to build for one of the 2. Maybe you build for both, although that's really talent expensive and probably not correct, but you probably could. You just have to, like, handle reloads and whatnot. The other consideration is that you can run gun kata as double pistol. And if you run gun kata as double pistol, it remains quiet. You have 2 silenced pistols. They're actually going to be 80% or whatever. If you have 4 enemies in range, you get 8 shots for 3 AP. That's pretty good. 8 shots would normally require, like, what, 15 AP? That's a lot. So guess what? That's really, really beneficial. Now, if they are actually stealth attacks, you can print crit chance and crit chance and crit chance. You get more degree arc here, right? 60, then 90, then 120. You get 10, then 15, then 25 crit chance here. And so this actually combines to 50% crit chance on gun kata with a very, very nearly 360-degree fire angle. It's actually not quite. If every guard is like a perfect cardinal 180 degrees away from another guard, there's always like an exactly even number, and everyone always has one person 180 degrees away, you can fail to hit the last guard. Also, by the way, the actual hard cap of number of targets in any kind of full auto is 4. Gun kata cannot hit 5 people, cannot hit 6 people. So I want to kind of recap a couple of numbers here, because I want to point out a lot of things, okay? So if you're shooting 1 target, gun kata is 2 shots for 3 AP. Kind of bad. If you're shooting 2 targets, gun kata is 4 shots for 3 AP, which is pretty good. If you're hitting 2 targets, though, Fanning is 6 shots for 3 AP, and it's guaranteed to use your best revolver. So in the 1 target case and the 2 target case, I would argue that Fanning is better. In the 3 target case, if your guns are equivalently powerful, then gun kata is 6 bullets at full power for 3 AP, which is great. Fanning is 6 bullets at 1/3 off for 3 AP. But again, that's if your guns are equal power. And then, of course, if you have 4 targets, gun kata is 8 shots at 3 AP. And at that point, of course, Fanning can't keep up. Don't get me wrong, right? But what it comes down to is that Fanning is basically always 6 shots. Although, again, with a haircut, unless you take some of these upgrades here, which valid, right? Don't get me wrong. But it's always 6 shots, basically always 6 shots for 3 AP. This is 2, 4, 6, or 8 shots for 3 AP. And so it really depends on how many enemies are around and if your guns are the same power level. Obviously, if you're double pistol, you literally can't use Fanning. If you're a double revolver, I think it's, in some cases, kind of close. And if you're a revolver pistol, gun kata is weaker Fanning in a 2 and 3 target case because you'd probably just rather shoot your revolver more often. This might ultimately come across as kind of pessimistic on gun kata. I don't want it to sound that way because the other thing I really want to bring up is the actual damage potential here is really, really, really high. It is easier to get 2, 3, or 4 targets by increasing the cone here. It is also a substantial damage increase to get 50% combined crit chance here, because if you're going to crit for 3x on a revolver, 50% of dealing triple damage is like, oh, yeah, gun kata says deal 2x damage or so, roughly. I think it's going to be, yeah, that's the math, right? Is gun kata says deal double damage, also hit more people for a slightly higher action point cost. Yeah, turns out that's gonna probably compensate properly for the fact that, you know, Fanning is always best revolver. Even if this is revolver plus pistol, you're probably still ending up in a slightly better state. It's pretty talent point heavy, right? This is 6 for the bottom here and 3 here. So max gun kata costs 10. That is a lot. That is, functionally 8 levels worth of talent points. But as we kind of come full circle, gun kata has a very, very good chance of one-shotting an entire room. You one-shot an entire room for 3 AP. Again, that 50% crit chance that comes out of this, that is not anything to laugh at. That is a lot of damage that's very strong. And again, you get 25 crit chance. I keep clicking the wrong one. 25 crit chance here from quick draw. So find 25 crit chance elsewhere. You get a little bit from tech. You get some stealth crit damage, which might add up. Ballistic is pure here. Great. Light weapon accuracy. Here's some more stealth crit damage, by the way, to further increase that. Can I find... I know I didn't yeah, so there's not a lot of crit chance boosters here. In fact, I can't basically find any. I know I had it written down somewhere, but it's not on my notes right now. Regardless, what I really want to say is you can't really go wrong in gun kata versus fanning because they're both very, very good. They do imply slightly different loadouts and different play styles, but they're both very, very good. I want to really impart that to you, that they're actually quite nice. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about multi-class options here for a gunslinger. We're going to go in order this time, just the thing, because it's easy. So Cyber Sword, I think, is probably a pretty poor option here. Gunslingers are all about using pistols effectively, or handguns effectively, and Cyber Swords are basically all about using swords effectively. I mean, there is a world where you're like, I'm revolver sword, and I use fanning, and then, slash slide. I mean, I can buy it. I mean, the thing is, you can't even use slash slide and gun cut at the same time, because you run out of items here. You run out of weapons. It's not really going to work. There's a bunch of things like you discharge ion bat. I guess you could use Shielded Rush. That's kind of one of the only things. This is a meme. Don't do it. It's obviously not very good. Agent EX has some interesting things here. So Agent EX lets you actually get a AoE crit vulnerability here, 15%. It's not a lot, but if you're looking for ways of getting crit vuln, it's there. It's pretty achievable. Cooldown to 3, second charge. It's right. I mean, I don't seriously recommend doing this, but the AoE is kind of nice. There's a better version of this. I wouldn't actually recommend doing this, but it's technically there. You can try to use Glitch to get into the middle of the enemy team to use gun kata better. If it turns out it went badly, Smoke Screen's pretty nice for keeping you safe. If you just want some tools for helping your team with stealth a little bit, here's Line Crawler. You can use Shadow to try to group enemies together. Anyone who sees the Shadow, if it comes across line of sight, they will run toward the endpoint. So you can try to group people together for fanning or gun kata and create your AoE for yourself. That can help you not need the cone increases overall. Realistically, again, I wouldn't really bother with a lot of this. The double SMG stuff is mostly incongruent with the handgun stuff. Those don't overlap almost at all. For the most part, I wouldn't bother. I mean, you could maybe have a really, really close distance shuriken wave and get a little bit of minus evasion. I wouldn't seriously consider this one. The reason I would do it would be for the stealth tools. It's Line Crawler is pretty solid, Glitch is pretty solid. If you're trying to do exactly this thing of jump in the middle of an enemy team and then revolver them all with gun kata, that combo can work. And then again, Smoke Screen is just good overall. Yeah, that's everything for my notes from that one. Soldier, I think, is likely very, very good. If you're not going all the way into the top left tree to grab Trigger Vector, you can hit just Iron Grip off the bat. You can basically get Iron Grip +4 for fewer points than even unlocking Trigger Vector, and it still comes with 20% ballistic as pure. It comes with 50% less recoil generation. This will allow you to use fanning and run around all this kind of stuff and not run into recoil problems, so that's always going to be pretty solid here. Marker Sights is a great way to generate a little bit of crit chance and accuracy, which can be kind of nice. You can get a combined 25 crit chance, 25 accuracy out of this one. The AoE is not great, 5 meters. Considering your, thrown bullet is pretty hard to use as an actual lure to get multiple people together because the radius is very, very small. That's going to be kind of unrealistic here. To get really good marker size value, maybe you have a soldier on your team doing this for you. It's kind of there. Keep in mind, a lot of this full auto stuff just does not do anything with you. You can, by the way, crosshair lock to set up for gun kata or fanning. That would totally work here as well. It's generic range accuracy and crit chance. So you could go for this kind of stuff. You can even get ballistic as pure. But this is doing a lot of the same things that Called Shot was doing, so it's not that important. That said, if you're getting crits, Savagery, right? If you're getting kills, Savagery pops for crit chance and ballistic is pure. Recoup, if you're getting crits, is going to print you action points, let you go harder. I mean, Soldier is going to work in every multi-class because it's are you using guns? Have some damage. Have fun. You really probably want crit chance because your pistols, revolvers have crit damage on them. Have fun, buddy. Burst Fire does count for pistols, by the way. If you're using pistol heavy, you need some way to shred armor. This is the better version of using Twin Iron, realistically, and you can, bump the chance here pretty well. I mean, I you know, I don't seriously recommend this doing this, because you could just kind of print a bunch of pure damage and do it this way instead, but it's there. It's kind of real. It's, again, you can get combat buffs for accuracy, and it's fine. I would say the better version overall, though, is going into Sniper. It's a bit more out of the way. You have to go through Deathwatch, which you might not actually want here. But Strike Zone and J-Tech are great ways of printing accuracy and crit chance because they are just generic buffs. They are going to easily work with Fanning and Gun Kata. They'll feel really good overall. Skull Shot will work with a Revolver. Rapid Ready will work with a Revolver. You can even use Nest. Nest is the same thing. It is a generic selfish buff to add crit chance and ballistic as pure. You can get more of it if you really, really want. If you can manage to come in stealthily, great. You can get your stealth crit chance to make sure that, you know, just maxed out Nest plus maxed out Gun Kata is immediately enough for 100% crit chance if you're in stealth. Guess what? They're all dead if that happens, right? So this sort of splash here, and much like these two classes, they don't require an implant, so it's not hard to get in there, spend about 8 points, and be like, look, I got what I came for, which is some accuracy, some damage, some whatever. I'm going to feel pretty good about it. It's going to work decently. And if you want to be like a gunslinger who's using a bunch of sniper tools, like using Ricochet, you can go into Sniper and, you know, use all the other sniper talents there. That's all going to be fine. Next up is Vanguard. Vanguard does require an implant, so that's going to be 2 implant slots locked up already. But there's quite a bit to like here. So you can use Lure. Lure will let you drag a bunch of enemies together to get a better Gun Kata or better Fanning. That could be nice. You can make the range pretty solid at 25 meters. You can make the radius pretty solid at 15. That is a pretty large group of enemies grabbed together. Again, 4 is the max target cap of Gun Kata, and it's not that hard to lure 4 guards into one location and then, you know, light them up with that one. Yeah, you're going to probably spend 6 points to cap out Lure this way. You probably want a second charge. You can get another Gun Kata pretty reliably. But, like, spending 6 points and 1 implant to make sure your Gun Katas are hitting 4 people, yeah, sounds good. I'm down for that. That's very reasonable. You can do that entirely. And then while you're here, it's like, look, I can be more selfish. I can take some jam kit charges. I can be useful here. You can use Silence to get some stealth crit chance and stealth crit damage. If you come up this way, you can use Blend to get a bunch of stealth crit chance and stealth crit damage. All very reasonable. Again, if you can find ways to be cheeky like that, you can, you know, be in a pretty cool spot and have that all happen. Honestly, pretty reasonable. Again, pistols are a stealth crit damage weapon, so you can make that happen. And stealth crit damage itself will work even if the weapon doesn't have natively stealth crit damage. You will get it on the character sheet and it will work, and so you can get 50% extra crit damage on a revolver, things like that. This can totally work. I think it's fine. Hacker, I think, probably doesn't really make a lot of sense. You can use it to get some more, you know, jam kit type stuff with packet loss. It's a pretty solid talent overall. 1 AP, good range. If you want, you can. Not something I would seriously recommend as a very real build here, but I guess if you really wanted to, you could do it. But there's not much else to look for here. I don't think Gunslinger Hacker really makes sense. Final option would be Scourge. Basically, one reason you might do this is if you are playing a more stealth-heavy gunslinger, we're using pistols a lot, you're using all your other tools, you're using Gun Kata with double silenced pistols, all that kind of fun stuff, might want to clean up the bodies. And so just going into Scourge and being like, look, my class is self-sufficient enough, I can just go into Dissolve and feel good about this one. Also, Tox Cloud, if you can get the sort of orientation correct. Tox Cloud comes with 10 crit vuln on it. It's not a lot, but it's there. This might bring you over the edge in a couple of cases, and you can feel kind of good about it and soften people up. Especially because you might be a little bit limited on damage. You know, 2 pistol shots each might not kill everyone. While they're going to lose their have health from the poison, it might be enough to kick them over the edge. You never know. You know, small possibility there. Not all that high, but it is definitely there. Not my seriously, like, heavily recommended option, but, you know, it's a possible option. So let's talk about what kind of stuff you could wear. We'll just kind of go look at market pistols, basically. And that will be a reasonable comparison of what we're talking about here. So here's pistols and revolvers from most of the street-level contacts here. And yeah, you're basically looking at deal 2.5x damage on a stealth crit. Because again, base crit damage is 1.5x, so I'm critting at 2.5x. If I'm on a revolver, I'm also critting on 2.5x. So, right, this requires stealth, this one doesn't. You'll notice that the accuracy comparison, 70 versus 65. Considering glancing hit requires 80, it is not that hard to get plus 10 on a pistol. It's a bit harder to get plus 15 on a revolver. But obviously, yeah, the damage is really, really, really nice here, and you're going to feel good about that one. As revolvers get better and better, right, you're getting more ballistic, more pure, more armor shred. Crit damage goes up by another 10. You go again, crit damage goes up by another 10. You're adding another, 15, 10 here. We go to the biggest one. We get another 10 crit damage, another 15, another 10. And you get accuracy up to a, solid 68. It looks kind of decent. You go up through pistols, and what do you see? You get 15 stealth crit per level, into another 15 here, into another 20 here. Now I'm stealth critting at, triple damage for the stealth crit for level 4 pistol versus only critting for, what, 2.8x? I mean, it's close, don't get me wrong, it's almost the same number, but if I can get there, hey, isn't that wonderful for me? But you can see that like the scaling of revolvers like heavily overshadows, like at level 1, right? It's like the revolver, less ballistic, but a ton of pure, and you go to level 4, and you're like, actually, no, the revolver is more ballistic and more pure. It's like, yeah, okay, it's there. Do you want to call out, there's a moderate gap in range, right? 6 meters here for the revolver. Starts at, around 7. Pistol, around 5, stays around 7. So it's like, hey, there is some optimal range to close if you can help it. Whatever, not much to bring up except that, like, hey, you're pretty clearly going to be caring about crit as a stat by playing these characters, and that means you probably want cyberware, right? And so, yep, display link for crit chance and crit damage is certainly nice. The crit damage, again, a little bit less valuable. We've already got some, but it's still there. Again, try to find ways to stack crit chance because you're going to want it in or out of the class. Right now in the game, there are 2 gunslingers. So there's the starting gunslinger Sid, and then there's the lone wolf here, who rolled the random name Lasora. But let's talk about Sid. I think Sid is arguably the strongest combat merc in the game. He comes out of the box with a pretty solid array of attributes. I like having 5 reaction. Comes with Scrappy, comes out to prove. And so you get some, pretty solid 3%. This, by the way, these don't scale, so it's just 3%. 3% light weapons accuracy is kind of nice. There's actually a very specific breakpoint I want to talk about, which is, let me see if I can show it off properly. So remember the 3% right here, okay? Let me see if I can remember this quite right. So let's take, I'm doing it wrong, sorry. Show me pistols. Okay, so the basic pistol has 70 accuracy, which becomes 73 thanks to him having 3%. And if you show me weapon mods, and you say, hey, show me pistol mods, I can't have all these, we're going to sort by weak and common. You can get this red dot for +2. So now we're at +5. And you can get this, I think it's this grip. Yeah, it's this grip here is +1. And then if you look at like the talent tree, I think it's actually pretty possible to get a little bit of light weapons accuracy like here. Yeah, so like here and here have more light accuracy, and the math works out that you get 80% hit chance exactly if you take the grip, even though the grip is only at 1% accuracy. It all adds up to +10%, which low-key is like weirdly a meaningful damage increase to guarantee glancing hits. It's kind of a deep cut there, but I wanted to bring it up as something that's kind of relevant. It is harder to get a revolver to 80%, but again, that's the magic breakpoint of guaranteeing glancing hits, which I think is really, really valuable. All right, whatever. Minor thing there. What I wanted to bring up for real, though, was 10% ballistic as extra pure is a huge deal. This is a massive amount of extra damage. Now, again, if you're like using revolvers or railguns, you don't care about this as much. But even if you take your gunslinger and you immediately multiclass into soldier, and you're like, actually, I'm a soldier using an assault rifle. This just reads like deal 50% more damage at all points in time, up to like 25, even 30% more damage against the really, really heavy targets. For a basic innate trait, that's absurd. That's an incredibly powerful bit of numbers here. Now, Scrap It to me is relatively dead. You should try to not take damage. These, in fact, aren't even evasion buffs. If you were trying to play evasion tank, it's not really there for you either. But Out to Prove is nice by giving you some crit chance. This is a scaling number. Top of my head, I don't remember what it scales up to, probably around 10%. But it's nice that this guy comes with light accuracy, comes with a really incredible ballistic as peer, comes with some reaction, which is nice for move speed, and one initiative here as well, and then comes with a scale and crit chance modifier, which means there's some really good stuff here. I want to reiterate, I think this is actually the strongest talent set for any ranged character in the game outside of using Cyberknight talents. So yeah, I think Sid is very powerful. The quote-unquote only downside is you can't give him a third multi-class. If you don't want to be a gunslinger and you want to be like a soldier sniper, Sid can't do that. Whatever's kind of minor, but I want to kind of bring that up. Other one is the Underworld Hub Gunslinger, who is the lone wolf, comes with a crap ton of reaction. It only comes with 2 stacks of -2 move detection radius, which is, unfortunately, I think really low value. You don't have a reason to get within 7 meters of an enemy, and you've already got deafening talents in Gunslinger itself, and Gunslinger, like, Cyber Sword makes very little sense overall. Again, you can just like not really be a gunslinger and immediately multi-class Cyber Sword, but that's pretty awkward, and yeah, I don't think really makes a ton of sense here. So unfortunately, I think this sort of these lines don't mean all that much. Reaction's nice and all, but yeah, most of these upgrades aren't very good. That said, as you talk with her, you can get some extra stuff. If you want to pause and read the convo, feel free to. But the point here is you get an option of extra traits here, and you could say, hey, look, She's one of very few characters who has access to the Cunning Improviser trait, which actually low-key is really good. You can hire her, not even as a gunslinger, but as someone who can run any legwork in the game. And this can increase. I think it goes up to 55 or 60%, which is actually pretty good base chance. And if you're able to rely on like other Underworld Hub tokens, which you probably are, you're already hiring this person, you could just use tokens to guarantee the legwork success and thus turn this character into actually just a really, really good legwork machine, which, you know, kind of decent overall. That said, saying, hey, give me initiative and XP. Yeah, I mean, like, the value of experience is to gain more talent points. But, okay, I might be up a talent point once in a while, but I'm losing an entire, like, trait that, like, might actually matter to me. So, for example, I could take this instead and gain a bunch of accuracy, and I might choose to multi-class sniper, I might not. But the fact is, this gives me some baseline accuracy, which I actually want. I actually want to land these attacks. You can come with some kind of back drop as well. Headhunters on the way, who cares? And then we can say, yes, we're going to hire you. Welcome to the team. Cool. And so now you come with a character who's like, okay, got slightly better stuff here overall, right? We're like, yeah, she comes with a ton of move speed, comes with some light weapons accuracy, which is, you know, nice. And then I look at Sid and I'm like, yeah, he comes with light weapons accuracy and ballistic spear and crit chance. And it's like, yeah, Sid's stronger, right? It's just Sid's stronger. So, you know, in terms of picking Gunslinger, yeah, I would say pick the starting one. He's really, really good overall. I think that's going to cover the class rundown and everything else to really care about. Again, primary thing is the display link. Other stuff is fine, but there's not a ton of other ways to gain like crit chance and hit chance and whatnot. So not much else to really write home about. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.